one saw it coming until Earth's war giants blocked the stars. The shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere like a falling star, its hull glowing red-hot from atmospheric friction. Inside, Commander Elizabeth Okada gripped her seat as the craft shuddered violently. Through the viewport, she could see the familiar blue marble of home, but something felt different this time. The weight of what she learned aboard the Hegemony mothership pressed down on her chest like a physical force. "Rough entry, Commander," called out Lieutenant Diego Vasquez from the pilot's seat. His knuckles were white on the controls as he fought to keep the shuttle stable. "But we'll make it down in one piece." Elizabeth nodded, though her mind was elsewhere. 3 months ago, she'd been humanity's first diplomatic representative to the Corvan Hegemony, a massive galactic empire that had grudgingly accepted Earth as a minor member world. The humans were considered primitive, barely worth acknowledgement, useful only for mining operations and basic labor. But during her stay on the Hegemony capital ship, Elizabeth had uncovered something that made her blood run cold. Hidden in encrypted files she'd accessed during a routine cultural exchange, she'd found humanity's death warrant. The Hegemony Council had voted unanimously. Earth would be made an example to other upstart species. The planet would be strip-mined, its population relocated to labor camps, its culture erased. The timeline was terrifyingly short. In 6 months, the Hegemony's pacification fleet would arrive to begin the optimization process. The shuttle touched down at Edwards Air Force Base just as the sun was setting. Elizabeth stepped out onto the tarmac, her legs still shaky from the journey. The dry desert air filled her lungs, and for a moment, she allowed herself to appreciate the simple pleasure of breathing Earth's atmosphere. General Kwame Asante was waiting for her beside a black SUV, his weathered face grim. At 62, he'd seen 3 wars and countless conflicts, but Elizabeth had never seen him look quite this serious. "Walk with me, Commander," he said simply. They moved away from the landing pad, out of earshot of the ground crew. The general's aide, a young man Elizabeth didn't recognize, maintained a respectful distance behind them. "Your preliminary report was concerning," General Asante said, his voice barely above a whisper. 6 months? Maybe less, Elizabeth replied. "The Corvan High Command sees us as insects, General. They're not even trying to hide their intentions anymore. They've done this to 47 other species in the past century." The general stopped walking and turned to face her. "And none of those species survived?" 3 managed partial evacuations to other star systems. The rest? Elizabeth shook her head. Complete cultural extinction. The Hegemony is very thorough. They resumed walking, their footsteps crunching on the gravel. In the distance, Elizabeth could see the lights of the base's main complex. But General Asante was leading her toward a smaller, more isolated building. "There's something you need to see," he said. "Something that's been classified at the highest levels for 23 years. The building they approached looked unremarkable from the outside. Just another concrete structure with a few security cameras and a single guard post. But as they got closer, Elizabeth noticed the unusual depth of the foundation, the way the building seemed to extend far underground. "General, what is this place?" "Project Titan," he replied, pressing his palm against a biometric scanner. After first contact with the Hegemony, certain individuals in the defense community became concerned about humanity's long-term prospects. We began asking uncomfortable questions. What if these aliens weren't as benevolent as they claimed? What if Earth needed to defend itself? The security door hissed open, revealing an elevator that descended much deeper than should have been possible. As they rode down, Elizabeth felt her ears pop from the pressure change. "How deep are we going?" 800 meters, the general said. "We needed to be sure this facility couldn't be detected by orbital scans." When the elevator doors opened, Elizabeth stepped into a vast underground complex that took her breath away. The ceiling stretched up at least 50 meters, supported by massive concrete pillars. But it wasn't the architecture that made her gasp. It was what filled the space. 3 enormous shapes loomed in the artificial cavern, each one easily the size of a mountain. They were covered in gray tarps, but their basic forms were unmistakable. Spacecraft of incredible size and complexity. "Sweet Jesus," Elizabeth whispered. How big are they? The smallest is 12 kilometers long, General Asante said with quiet pride. The largest is 18. Each one took 7 years to build, using technologies we've developed in complete secrecy. A woman approached them from across the cavern floor. She was in her 50s, with silver-streaked hair and the kind of intense eyes that spoke of countless sleepless nights spent solving impossible problems. Commander Okada, General Asante said. Meet Dr. Rashida Okada, no relation I assume, our Chief Technology Officer for Project Titan. Dr. Okada shook Elizabeth's hand firmly. We've been expecting you, Commander. Your intelligence confirms what our deep space sensors detected 3 weeks ago. The hegemony is massing ships at the Procyon staging area. 3 weeks? Elizabeth felt a chill run down her spine. They're moving faster than I thought, which is why we're accelerating our timeline, the general said. Dr. Okada, show her the Phoenix. They walked toward the nearest of the 3 massive shapes. As they got closer, Elizabeth could see that it wasn't just covered by tarps. The entire surface was wrapped in some kind of sophisticated camouflage system that made it appear to be solid rock from above. The Phoenix, the Dragon, and the Leviathan, Dr. Okada explained. Each one is designed to appear as a natural celestial body when viewed by conventional sensors. The hegemony will see them as asteroids or small moons until we choose to reveal them. But how? Elizabeth asked. How did humanity build ships this size without anyone noticing? Very carefully, Dr. Okada replied with a slight smile, and with a lot of help from people who shared our concerns about the future. The mining operations on Luna weren't just for resource extraction. They were cover for material acquisition. The research stations on Mars weren't just for scientific study. They were component manufacturing facilities. They reached a service elevator that carried them up to the Phoenix's hull. Even standing on the surface of the ship, Elizabeth couldn't see the edges. It was like standing on the surface of a small world. The deception technology is our greatest achievement, Dr. Okada continued. Active camouflage systems that can fool any scanner the hegemony possesses. From the outside, these ships look like dead rocks drifting in space. From the inside, she gestured toward a concealed hatch that had just opened in the hull. They're the most advanced warships ever built by human hands. The interior of the Phoenix was even more impressive than its exterior. Corridors wide enough for vehicle traffic stretched in every direction, branching into countless smaller passages. The walls were lined with what appeared to be some kind of advanced polymer, smooth and seamless. Each ship can carry 2 million people in emergency conditions, Dr. Okada explained as they walked. But they're not just evacuation vessels. They're designed to fight. Fight the hegemony? Elizabeth couldn't keep the skepticism out of her voice. Doctor, I've seen their ships. They have weapons that can crack planets. So do we, the doctor replied quietly. They entered a vast chamber that took Elizabeth's breath away. The space was filled with weapon systems unlike anything she'd ever seen, sleek, angular devices that hummed with barely contained energy. Particle beam arrays, Dr. Okada explained. Each ship carries 400 of them, but that's just the beginning. Captain Riley Jang met them at the center of the weapons bay. He was younger than Elizabeth had expected, probably in his early 30s, but his eyes held the steady confidence of someone who'd spent years preparing for this moment. Commander, he said, extending his hand, I'll be commanding Phoenix when the time comes. Want to see what we can do? Without waiting for an answer, he led them to an observation deck that looked out over the ship's primary weapon systems. At his command, technicians began powering up the arrays. We can't fire them at full power down here, Captain Zhang explained, but even at 1%, you'll get the idea. The particle beams activated with a sound like distant thunder. Energy cascaded between the weapon nodes, creating patterns of light that danced across the chamber walls. Even at minimal power, the display was impressive. At full power, Zhang continued, each array can punch through a hegemony battleship's shields in under 10 seconds. The kinetic impact alone would be enough to break a ship in half. And the Dragon and Leviathan have similar weapons? Elizabeth asked. Similar but not identical, Dr. Okada replied. The Dragon specializes in electronic warfare. It can shut down enemy communications and navigation systems across an entire fleet. The Leviathan is our heavy hitter. It carries weapons that can engage targets at interplanetary distances. As they toured the ship, Elizabeth met the crew members who would operate humanity's secret fleet. They were drawn from every branch of the military, every space agency, every relevant civilian organization. But what struck her most was their quiet determination. These people knew they were preparing for a war that would determine the fate of their species. "How many people know about this?" she asked General Asante as they returned to the surface. "Fewer than 3,000 worldwide," he replied. "Everyone from the construction workers to the component manufacturers believes they're working on separate, unrelated projects. Only the senior staff knows the full scope of what we're building." The next few months passed in a blur of frantic activity. While the world above continued its normal routines, the secret facilities beneath the surface worked around the clock to prepare for the coming conflict. Elizabeth found herself serving as a liaison between military command and the civilian leadership. It was a delicate balance. They needed to prepare the population for what was coming without causing panic or revealing the existence of Project Titan to potential hegemony spies. The evacuation plans were particularly challenging. 2 million people could be saved aboard the 3 ships, but Earth's population was approaching 8 billion. Hard choices would have to be made. "We prioritize families with young children," General Asante explained during one of their planning sessions. "Then essential personnel, scientists, engineers, cultural preservationists. We need to ensure that human civilization can continue even if the worst happens." Dr. Okada worked tirelessly to refine the ship's systems. The deception technology was particularly crucial. If the hegemony detected the ships before they were ready to fight, the entire plan would collapse. "We're pushing the boundaries of physics," she told Elizabeth during one of their late-night conversations. "The energy requirements for maintaining the camouflage fields are enormous. We can only sustain them for about 6 months before the fusion reactors need maintenance. And if the hegemony arrives before then we fight with what we have," Dr. Okada replied grimly. "Ready or not." The hegemony pacification fleet arrived 3 weeks ahead of schedule. Elizabeth was in the command center when the first sensor readings came in. The underground facility had been expanded to accommodate hundreds of additional personnel, all working frantically to coordinate humanity's defense. 67 ships, reported Lieutenant Vasquez, who had been reassigned to the sensor array. 3 dreadnoughts, 12 heavy cruisers, and 52 support vessels. They're taking positions around Earth in a standard pacification formation. General Asante studied the tactical display with the practiced eye of a lifetime soldier. They're not expecting resistance. Look at their positioning. They're optimized for orbital bombardment, not ship-to-ship combat. "That's what we were counting on," Captain Jung said. He'd been promoted to admiral and now commanded the entire fleet from the Phoenix's bridge. "They think they're here to discipline a primitive species. They have no idea what's waiting for them." The hegemony ships took their time establishing orbit, their movements deliberate and unhurried. From their perspective, this was routine, just another minor species to be brought into line. The lead ship, a massive dreadnought called the Subjugator, broadcast a message to Earth's surface. The alien voice was translated by the communications array, its tone cold and emotionless. "Primitive species of the 3rd planet," the message began. "By order of the Corvan hegemony, your world has been designated for optimization. Your population will be relocated to appropriate facilities. Your resources will be harvested for the benefit of the greater galactic community. Resistance will be met with immediate pacification. You have 24 hours to prepare for the arrival of collection teams." In the command center, the mood was tense but focused. This was the moment they'd been preparing for. "All ships report ready," Admiral Zhang announced. "The Phoenix is at full combat readiness. The Dragon has finished its pre-flight checks. The Leviathan is standing by for launch authorization." "Evacuation status?" General Asante asked. 1.7 million people have been moved to the ships, reported Colonel Martinez, the evacuation coordinator. "We're still processing the final groups, but we should have everyone aboard within 6 hours. "We may not have 6 hours," Elizabeth said, pointing to the tactical display. "Look at their patrol patterns. They're getting ready to deploy ground forces." The hegemony ships were indeed changing formation, moving into positions that would allow them to land troops on Earth's surface. The timeline was accelerating. Admiral Zhang, General Asante said formally, "You have authorization to begin Operation Prometheus. Show them what humanity can do." The three ships began their ascent from the hidden underground facilities. For decades, they had remained concealed beneath the surface, invisible to orbital sensors. Now, for the first time, they emerged into the light. The Phoenix was the first to break the surface, its massive bulk rising from what appeared to be solid ground. The camouflage systems were still active, making the ship appear to be a floating mountain of rock and ice. The Dragon followed, its sleeker profile designed for speed and maneuverability. The Leviathan was last, its enormous bulk requiring more time to clear the surface installations. In space, the Hegemony fleet continued their preparations, unaware that they were about to face the greatest surprise in military history. "All ships are clear of the surface," Admiral Zheng reported. "Engaging stealth drives now." The three ships activated their propulsion systems and began their journey toward orbit. To any observer, they appeared to be asteroids drifting through space, drawn by Earth's gravity. Commander Thexkor stood on the bridge of the subjugator, reviewing the final preparations for the planet's optimization. The operation would be routine. Land troops, establish collection centers, begin the relocation process. The primitive humans would resist briefly, but their crude weapons posed no threat to hegemony forces. "Sir," one of his officers reported, "we're detecting some unusual gravitational readings. 3 large objects appear to be approaching from the outer system." Thexkor glanced at the sensor display with mild interest. "Asteroids, most likely. This system has an unusually high concentration of debris. Should we investigate?" "Unnecessary," the commander replied. "Focus on the primary objective. We begin ground operations in 6 hours." But as the hours passed, the 3 asteroids continued their approach. They were following trajectories that would bring them uncomfortably close to the Hegemony fleet. "Sir," the sensor officer called out again, "the objects are showing some unusual characteristics. Their density readings are inconsistent with normal asteroid composition." Thexkor was beginning to feel the first stirrings of concern. In 40 years of service, he learned to trust his instincts when something felt wrong. "Conduct a detailed scan," he ordered. "I want to know exactly what we're dealing with." The intensive scans revealed nothing unusual, just 3 large rocks drifting through space. But Commander Thexkor remained uneasy. Something about the situation didn't feel right. Aboard the Phoenix, Admiral Zheng watched the Hegemony fleet through the ship's concealed sensors. The enemy ships were maintaining their standard formation, showing no signs of alarm or preparation for combat. "They still don't see us," reported Commander Lisa Torres, the ship's tactical officer. "The camouflage is holding perfectly. Range to target 80,000 kilometers in closing. We'll be in optimal firing position in 40 minutes. Zhang nodded, then activated the fleet communications channel. "Dragon, Leviathan, this is Phoenix. Report status." "Dragon ready," came the reply from Captain Ryan Cross. "Electronic warfare systems are online and prepared for deployment." "Leviathan ready," reported Captain Kenji Nakamura. "Heavy weapons are charged and targeted." "Acknowledged," Zhang said. "Maintain current approach vectors. We go active in 35 minutes. The final minutes felt like hours. In the command center deep beneath Earth's surface, hundreds of people watched the tactical displays with barely contained tension. Everything they'd worked for, everything they'd hoped for, came down to the next few minutes. 20 seconds to weapons range, Commander Torres announced. Admiral Zhang took a deep breath. "All ships, prepare to drop camouflage on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark." The transformation was instantaneous and shocking. 3 massive warships materialized from what had appeared to be empty space, their hulls gleaming with advanced armor plating. The Hegemony fleet, caught completely off guard, scrambled to respond. "What in the name of the void?" Commander Thexkor began, but his words were cut off as the Phoenix opened fire. The particle beam arrays activated with devastating effect. Streams of coherent energy lanced out across space, striking the Hegemony ships with pinpoint accuracy. The first barrage destroyed 6 vessels outright and crippled 4 more. The Dragon deployed its electronic warfare systems, sending powerful jamming signals across the Hegemony fleet. Enemy communications went down, navigation systems failed, and weapon targeting became erratic. The Leviathan engaged the largest enemy ships with its heavy weapons. Each shot was like a miniature star, bright enough to be seen from Earth's surface. The massive dreadnought subjugator took 3 direct hits, its shields failing under the incredible assault. "Impossible," Thexcor shouted as his ship shuddered under the attack. "These primitives don't have this kind of technology." But the evidence was right in front of him. The 3 human ships moved through space with deadly grace, their weapon systems operating with precision that exceeded anything in the hegemony arsenal. The Phoenix launched its fighter squadrons, hundreds of small, agile craft that swarmed around the larger enemy ships. The human pilots had trained for years for this moment, and their skill showed in every maneuver. "Enemy formation is breaking apart," reported Commander Torres. "They're trying to retreat, but we're faster." The battle was more one-sided than anyone had dared hope. The hegemony fleet, designed for intimidation rather than combat, was no match for the human warships. Within 2 hours, 37 enemy vessels had been destroyed or disabled. Commander Thexcor, his ship dying around him, made one final transmission to Hegemony Command. "This is Subjugator. The humans, they were ready for us. They have weapons, ships. We never saw them coming. The optimization has failed. Repeat, the optimization has failed." The transmission cut off as the Phoenix delivered the final blow to the Hegemony flagship. In the aftermath of the battle, the 3 human ships established orbit around Earth, their presence a clear message to any other potential threats. The secret was out. Humanity was no longer a primitive species to be ignored. 6 months later, Admiral Zheng stood on the observation deck of the Phoenix, watching as construction crews worked to build humanity's first orbital defense platform. The facility would be visible to anyone with a telescope, a deliberate statement of human capabilities. "The Hegemony Council has formally withdrawn all claims to the Sol system," reported General Asante during their daily briefing. "They've also agreed to our demands for reparations and the establishment of a neutral zone around Earth." "And the other species?" Elizabeth asked. She'd been promoted to Director of Interspecies Relations, a position that hadn't existed before the battle. "7 systems have declared independence from the hegemony," the general replied. "They're asking for human assistance in establishing their own defense forces. It seems our little demonstration has had some unexpected consequences." Dr. Okada, now leading the expanded weapons development program, had exciting news of her own. "The 4th and 5th ships are ahead of schedule," she reported. "Phoenix-class vessels, but with improved systems based on what we learned from the battle." "And the population response?" Zhang asked. "Mixed," Elizabeth admitted. "Some people are angry that we kept this secret for so long. Others are grateful that we were prepared. But overall, there's a sense of pride in what we accomplished." As the months passed, Earth's position in the galaxy continued to evolve. The hegemony, weakened by the loss of their pacification fleet and the rebellion of several member species, was forced to negotiate with humanity as equals. New technologies flowed both ways. Human engineering prowess, combined with alien scientific knowledge, led to breakthroughs that benefited everyone. The camouflage systems that had hidden the Phoenix, Dragon, and Leviathan were adapted for peaceful purposes, while hegemony medical technology helped extend human lifespans. But perhaps the most important change was philosophical. The galaxy had learned that size and age didn't guarantee superiority. A young species with determination and ingenuity could change the balance of power overnight. The hardest part, Admiral Zheng reflected during a quiet moment, was keeping the secret, knowing that we had the capability to defend ourselves, but having to wait until the right moment to reveal it. "Do you think we waited too long?" Elizabeth asked. Zhang considered the question carefully. If we'd revealed the ships earlier, the hegemony might have had time to prepare countermeasures. If we'd waited longer, they might have destroyed Earth before we could act. I think we chose the right moment. The Phoenix continued its patrol of Earth's solar system, no longer hidden but proudly visible to anyone who cared to look. Its presence was a reminder that appearances could be deceiving, that the smallest species could have the biggest surprises. In the years that followed, humanity would face new challenges and opportunities. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, but it was also full of dangers. The lesson of the Phoenix and her sister ships was clear: preparation, determination, and the element of surprise could overcome even the greatest odds. The hegemony had learned this lesson the hard way. They'd seen 3 asteroids approaching their fleet and hadn't given them a second thought. By the time they realized their mistake, it was too late. No one had seen it coming until Earth's war giants blocked the stars. And in that moment, everything changed forever.